the focus for today is really about how we leverage our tech stack in a really meaningful way to provide a better talent management experience across our organizations. We are, again, going to talk about Workday as a key part of that, but you don't have to be a Workday customer to get value from this conversation because I'm sure a lot of the pain and hopefully even some of the solutions that you found or that Rosalind can share with us as well. They apply regardless of which system. So with that in mind, though, we will start it off with a Workday specific question. So in the poll, if you can, this should pop up here in a second. Let us know what parts of the Workday ecosystem are you using today. So when we think about, and this is only HR specific today. So I know Workday has a lot of other products that are in the finance arena. But just as we think about Workday specific products, let us know which ones that you're using, just so we kind of have a little bit of a sense for where people are at, and maybe it'll give us a little bit of way to frame maybe some of the responses or the conversation today. So fill that in if you got a chance, and we'll share the results here in a second. In the meantime, while we're gathering that, so I'll give a quick background to Rosalind, and I'll let her give her bio. We recently had a lunch conversation not too long ago, and it was clear that Rosalind has a ton of great experience, and it has really kind of informed her perspective on what's happening in HR tech, broadly speaking, but also how we can leverage that in a more meaningful way to provide a better employee experience and to provide better development and resources for our people. So, with that in mind, I think what I'll start with, Rosalind, is just a question for you to kind of give some background and a little bit of insight. So, just yeah, let's start there. Why don't you start with your career and kind of
Yeah,
uh, how it led you to this place today?
sure. So I'm currently the head of HR, technology and AI enablement for GE Healthcare. I've been working through that for the last 2 years, and that was right after we separated the GE conglomerate into three companies. Whereas I spent the 7 years prior, 8 years prior to that, as the head of learning operations and strategy for all of the companies within the GE wheelhouse. Before that, I worked for a couple of other companies, such as Luxottica and Citigroup, all within the learning and talent space. Historically, just touching technology in a bunch of different ways. Just a cool fun fact, I was the first person in Citigroup to ever do a virtual facilitation for learning. Many, many, many years ago, and certainly learned the good, the bad, the ugly of those type of activities the hard way. So always within my roles, I've touched the world of HR technology just in different capacities. Over the last 2 years have been quite eye-opening, not only because of the ownership of the broader HR technology stack, and again, I'm responsible for the governance, the strategy, and the roadmap of what we're doing with HR technology as a whole. But also the addition of the AI landscape and how we're looking at leveraging AI for the employee experience ongoing. And then, what do we think AI can really do? What should our core and source systems like a Workday really do? And then what's the journey that our core products are going on as well? And how do we tie all of that together for a better experience? So I'm involved in all of those conversations. And then on top of that, there's a thought process around what's the organization of HR, what does that look like in the future, right? Are there COEs? Right? Are there HR business partners? Are there people operation? Are there people operations? Like, oh, and if it is, what is it? What are we really doing? So when we marry the people org and the value that AI can bring and the HR technology stack and how that's evolving together, we're going to blow it up, right? It's about that time where the org model starts to fade and technology starts to push into a different way. But and with all of that, we still have the human element that needs to be managed and cared for. And where does that matter most? And so that's
Yeah,
the space that I've been working in.
that's awesome. Thank you. And we'll definitely get back into the AI piece a little bit
Mhm.
later. And maybe as I ask this next question, if we can maybe show the poll results, because I think that
Yeah.
will that'll roll into that. When we start, I think before we really kind of jump into some of the questions, one of the things I think it'd probably be good for people to know is I think you're in a really unique situation with GE Healthcare, right? Because it was a larger conglomerate. It's been broken into three organizations. And while you have all of this legacy and this history with GE, you're also to some degree starting from scratch in some ways with your tech stack. So maybe give a little bit of background on that and maybe how that's affected your, the HR tech landscape for
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. I think one of the first areas that we really focused on was what would be those strategic products that matter for healthcare. When you go from such a large company to a smaller company, and I'd say smaller is relative, and we still have 52,000 employees, 30,000 contingent workers. We're not small by any means. We're in over 75 countries, but comparatively, we didn't. Our tech stack is too large and it's too complex, and it was designed for a conglomerate. So really going back to the root of what we're doing, and we started with Workday. So what are the tools that we have within Workday? Are we leveraging those tools appropriately? And where do we want to go? And what business problems do we want to solve first? So, a couple of areas where we spent some heavy lift already is looking at our security model. How do we really work? What's our organizational structure to be able to in order to facilitate the day-to-day business needs within the world of Workday? Do we have the right security model within our HCM? The answer was no. So we've blown that up in various areas, like our talent teams and how do they work? What should they be able to see and do? We restructured our HR people operations organization to be able to also make decisions around what we see and do. At the same time, when we moved into this healthcare space, we brought the US payroll into Workday. So we are now audited in a different way by our SOX compliant teams. So how does that change that ecosystem, which then has driven us into the conversations around time tracking and the simplification of those efforts, since our HR team spent quite a bit of time around the people's pay and time. The talent side, we redesigned in the first year what our talent operating model would look like in our life cycle activities. So, for example, when we were a corporate organization, we required 360s. We found that most people were not giving truthful or helpful feedback in those 360s. It's just not the way people provide feedback normally. So we pulled that out as a requirement and allowed that to be a facilitated conversation within the tool. We simplified our timing and made sure we aligned it to the way the business truly worked. So when is compensation coming versus when should we be done with our year ends? So year end is now actually done by year end activities. So our roll up for comp season can come through cleanly going into January. So we made some major changes really, really quickly. And a lot of it was really about the experience. Where do people really put their energy and what's going to provide value, leveraging Workday? And where do we want to invest in Workday more ongoing? And Workday is our strategic tool. So we do have a Workday first mentality. Can Workday do it? Should Workday do it? Is it the right experience? That first. And if not, then we consider some of the other tools within our ecosystem before we even go to an additional tool outside of what we may already own.
That's awesome. So it sounds like, at least from a starting point, like a lot of the core kind of HR stuff, payroll, time and attendance, those
Yeah,
things were like
clean them
a
up.
heavy focus for you. But it sounds like maybe some of that has started to shift more towards talent management, more
Yeah.
strategic kinds of components. When you think about your current landscape, where do data and process silos exist today?
Everywhere. I would say we're probably not unique in that in too many places. I would say our process silos fit within the actual COEs. So we think about talent acquisition, right? Talent acquisition will have the conversation around onboarding. However, does talent acquisition actually own onboarding? Do we have a dedicated owner to look at onboarding as a governance, as a management? And the answer is no today, right? Talent acquisition says I own onboarding, but they really own pre-boarding, not necessarily onboarding. Learning, on the other hand, is saying, well, maybe I own onboarding, right? And what's the process behind it? But they don't play well together because we don't have an overarching experience leader to determine what is the definition of onboarding and what are the pieces that should play well together within those activities, and as an example. But so we have a lot of silos within the COEs as they're trying to determine how they work together. And what's it starting to drive is a conversation around and we're starting to shift the conversation to what is the data that we have within the system and what is meaningful. So, for example, is your learning, or I'm sorry, your location, where do you sit? Is that a piece of critical data on people? And where and why? In the business, what does that drive? Why would we want to know where somebody sits physically? Does that matter? Versus a skill, right? What is the value of a skill from a people data marker? What does it actually drive from an action point of view? So we're starting to break down those silos in that data space with the activities around what's meaningful people data that will drive action, and where is that people data today? And is it consistent? Does it require governance? So as we start to break that down to those more simple terms, it's removing the ownership grab for process and data from that perspective, but starting to rethink, well, what outcomes are we trying to drive for the business? What processes make sense to remove silos out of this space, and what data is it going to drive and ongoing? So it's a slow shift. It's a major change management consideration, but I would say we have silos that really driven by those COEs
Yeah.
today.
No, it makes perfect sense. I like your example too of kind of pre-boarding versus onboarding because I mean
Mm-hmm.
it is oftentimes there's handoffs along the way, and those
Sure.
are really where those opportunities for silos to exist and where data, either isn't managed well in one step of the process, but it affects kind of the downstream, again, employee experience. So I think that was a really great example. You also kind of mentioned skills in there. So I think that could be a really good jumping off point because I know right now for a lot of organizations that we work with, skills is kind of front and center. And, a question that I regularly ask is like, what are your top three, talent strategies? And there's very few organizations that we talk with today that skills isn't in their top three, right?
Yeah.
And that's a loaded thing. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So maybe talk about, what work you're doing from a skills standpoint today. I know Workday makes a big deal about Skills Cloud and, kind of the quality of the data because of the way the system is built. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's on the business to identify, hey, how can we leverage the skills data in really meaningful ways across the entire talent management, spectrum, if you will.
Yeah.
So, what have you found has been helpful in, leveraging Skills Cloud inside of Workday to really drive meaningful value for the business?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of things that are going on in healthcare. We are not a skills-based strategy company. That is not our talent strategy. However, our talent strategy requires skills in order to be successful. And we see two things happening. We see a grassroots effort within our organization to use skills in Workday. So therefore, what that means is that we have key business areas. In some cases, there's over 5,000 employees where our HR partners have started, and in partnership with the business partners, have worked with companies like Drop to map the skills that they currently have within the organization versus the skills that they need. So there's work like that that's truly happening within the business, and they're leveraging that work to make decisions around training, succession, et cetera. But it's not in Workday because now, I'm going to say two things about that because our most senior leadership strategy hasn't yet adopted the mentality of what skills data actually does when it starts to connect the dots within the organization. So we have a grassroots effort saying, hey, we need it, raising their hands, and they're starting to give lots of use cases and experiences that show that they are ready for the change management and activities that are required to build, to define skills, manage skills, and use skills to make decisions, as well as our senior leadership is now starting to say, well, how do we make better decisions around who should be successors? Which roles are require successors in the first place? How would we know? So the questions that are being asked from the most senior space are starting to drive into the need for skills, and our business is starting to leverage skills. So what we've done to help facilitate that conversation is to say two things. One, we turned on skills. Everybody can put their skills in. We have no oversight, we have no validation, and we don't care. And that's a good thing right now. Just get used to putting your skills in just like you do with LinkedIn or anywhere else. The second thing that we've done is we've taken one of these grassroots effort teams and said, let's take a group and put your skills and start to map it to your job profiles and descriptions and start to and turn on the natural out of the box dashboards to start to give you insights to say, based on the work you did independently, like with a drop and what you think you need, and then you put it into a system like Workday, what does it tell you? What is it starting to tell you? And what we found is that what the business thought the skills, three things. The business thought the skills were that were needed were not the same as what people put in as what their skills were in Workday. That was the first gap. Cool. The second thing is that the skills that the business felt was needed based on the job profiles within the organization was not the same as what the individuals have today or need or have noted that they need. And the third thing is that they never actually have a true plan of learning that's like, although they thought they did, the skills that they need to build aren't the same learning activities in past that they thought they needed. So the visibility alone, so even if it's not perfect, even if we're not validating who has what skills right now, just the visibility to see where your inconsistencies are and how does that interpret drove an entirely different conversation to say, are we speaking the same language about skills? Do we understand what skills can do for us? Do we know, do we have alignment and of where we want to go with skills? And who's right or wrong? Are our employees right? Are our job profiles right? And that's the discussion we're in, which is a great place to be because as soon as we settle that, there's a point of view, there's a perspective, and they start pulling that together to say, now we can tie in the right learning. Now we can say, hey, actually, this person does have the skills. I just never recognized it before. Do we need coach? But where do we want to go with these conversations? Or, wow, we're doing a really great job at our current business with the wrong skills. So could we do much better with the right skills? Or what we thought the skills were, are people really actually having the right skills? So it is driving that dialogue just based on that visibility. But we started small to allow for that experience to happen without overwhelming our company.
Yeah. And I think that's a good opportunity for a kind of a follow-up question around that because I mean I do think companies struggle a lot with that in terms of like, hey, is it top down? Is it bottoms up? You know, like do you just turn things on or is it a big, large enterprise-wide initiative that requires, lots of project managers and, all of that. And what I'm hearing you say is like, hey, really the grad just turning it on, making it available, like offered the organization a ton of great insight
That's right.
that could be translated back into other areas. Because like what I hear you say from that standpoint too, the example that you gave is like that could also translate back into talent acquisition, right? So again, thinking about where does data and the systems help us kind of break down some of those silos. Now you have visibility to it. You can understand that like, oh, hey, maybe we should be thinking a little bit differently about what that talent acquisition
That's right.
strategy should look like because now we have a set of skills.
That's
Now,
right.
is it complete? Is it, fully governed, all that kind of stuff? Like, of course not, but which I'm sure would make some people uncomfortable with that process. But it's probably easier to go back and clean some of that stuff up and to create governance around it than to potentially force something in that isn't going to actually work for the business.
Right.
So, do you have anything to add, with that lens?
Yeah, I mean, it really does because when you think, if you start with a smaller group, right, one, they're bought in to look at it and give you feedback and think through the impact that it's having. And it's actually change management is the harder part around the skills and the use of them, not the actual addition of skills and the activities within the systems. I mean, that's a heavy lift, but the sustainability and the value comes from the change management to use the skills data in a way that's going to be beneficial to your company is what matters. So what's interesting is it's giving us insights as to, when we think about governance around this activity, right? We went in with no governance on purpose and in a controlled environment. Is that, well, what do we have to really govern? We have to govern, like, where do skills matter? Skills matter on safety activities. So where would we want to prove that they really do have that skill? Like if you can drive a forklift, maybe we want to know that for real, right? That's not a skill we make up. It's a safety issue if so. Okay, that's a topic in which we want to have validation and value. So how would we want to do those types of things? Or the other area that the discussion has led to is that the skills that drive the core of our company. So, like, we are the ones that when we talk about, we're a healthcare company that is building technology and tools and using AI in order to feed back to the healthcare industry the results, right, and faster to market results for people's situations. So, do we want to make sure that somebody truly has a skill that's at a critical moment of our competitive value within the marketplace? Yes. So what are those skills that say, hey, we want to validate these types of skills that hit that definition of critical to driving our business forward? The rest of them, the rest of the skills come out in your performance management every day. I mean, we still, you still don't hire someone without an interview, like to even change internally. You're going to validate some of the skills and the experiences that people are having, the performance that when we think about performance management and that process that we're going through and the regular touch points, we're updating that data that can then tie out to, hey, what are those skills that I really had? So we don't need to babysit them, if you will. We really only need to validate and focus on the ones that are either safety issue or directly tied to our competitive edge within the business. Everything
Yeah.
else, we're feeling pretty confident that that direction keeps the overhead down, keeps the focus in the right places, and allows for the dialogue to start to shift in a way that's helpful and beneficial to the future state of our company.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit because one, I didn't think we would spend that much time talking about skills, but I do think it is a really kind of a key strategy for a lot of organizations. But I think the other thing, and I do think a lot of the conversation we've had has been around kind of like basic blocking and tackling. But when we think about kind of more strategic value and specifically around like managing the end-to-end talent management process or like the life cycle of an employee. What role do you see like personalization, maybe AI playing in again, because I think if you're going to get to a place where you can really create a great employee experience, you know, being able to look across different systems, look across different processes, is a critical element of that. So, what are you doing? What are you seeing? What are you experimenting with in terms of leveraging AI to kind of work across those different data sets to create a really great employee experience?
Yeah. So when it comes to the bigger picture, right? So Workday is one aspect of it. It's the people data and some of the talent processes, but it doesn't necessarily help our teams connect the dots between all of the different activities that are out there. So we are experimenting with the kind of a AI for all things. So maybe a bot of bots, and how does that connect like our service cloud activity or service now activities, service cloud activities, our Microsoft experiences, the meetings that we're in, the data and the documentation that we have in OneDrive for our priorities as a company. And then on top of that, what did we put in as our priorities and our connections to our individual performances and needs, as well as things like Salesforce.com. So how do we're working through right now all of those connection points to say that if I were to have a proactive experience with AI, not a reactive one, that it can tell you, hey, we just launched mid-year. These are the conversations. Would you like me to draft a few key points based on your current priorities and the activities that you've done in the last couple of weeks or a couple of months, based on what I've seen on your calendar? That's what we're trying to get to, is to say, how does AI flip the switch to say, how do I proactively build some of those activities for you? And then our responsibility as individuals is to validate, verify, update, say, hey, don't forget, I also did ABC, right? And it's like, oh, let me look for terms related to this, or hey, the AI bot can start to connect. By the way, your sales that you are expected to achieve are behind. If we break it out by 12 months, they're behind. How do you want to address that? Here are some thoughts for you. Like, we're trying to get the AI connections to get into that proactive space. We've had some successes in some areas and we had some failures in some areas. We started with the Microsoft Copilot experiences first, so building those the more broad experience. And now we're looking at some more robust large language models in order to build that agent of agents to pull those pieces together just because of limitations that we see in Microsoft. But all of them have meaning to get to that proactive experience, not just a reactive one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things that you mentioned in there too, and I don't want to get too technical or nuanced for people who maybe aren't super into the AI space. So you used Microsoft Copilots initially. You're kind of experimenting with some other pieces. Are you also using like agentic approaches with like MCP protocols and those kinds of things, or and are you building internally, or as you mentioned earlier, looking at Workday? And I know there's been a lot of announcements on the Workday side, but I think maybe a little light on delivery at this point. But are there solutions that you're finding that others can take a look at as well?
Yeah, I think we start the co-pilot for a citizen built activity is where we're leaning the most when it comes to day to day, which does open the door for anyone to start building personal productivity opportunities when it comes to agentic experiences. I agree, Workday has been big story coming out, right? What does Illuminate look like? But the delivery on it has been a little bit slow and a little unclear as to what those agentic experiences are going to be. Like, what's the definition of an onboarding agent? Like agentic experience. I don't know what that means yet from Workday, and we're looking forward to those pieces because we'll tap into them. So all of our core source systems, we'll turn on everything we can that has meaning to us to take advantage of it. But when we come to the bigger ones, so for example, we have one out there right now for workforce planning that we're taking a look at. Those are vetted up against some of the other large language models when we think that are in our IT space. So they'll tap into the Azure teams. They're looking at what can Google do. They're looking at some of the other large language models that may be better value. We're not building that from a day-to-day citizen at this point. We're really leaning in, and it is internal though. I will share we are looking internal for most of our builds, but we're leaning our IT teams for those bigger, hairier responsibilities. We did just sign a relationship with ChatGPT to bring in an enterprise experience, and we'll start the comparison between what does Copilot do for day to day versus ChatGPT,
Yeah,
and why would you use one versus the other. And I think our company is starting to be more confident that it's not a one size fit all experience.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
No, I think we're seeing very similar approaches and I think conclusions as well.
Mhm.
We shift gears a little bit. So, since a big part of what we're talking about and a big part of what you leverage, and you mentioned earlier that it's kind of Workday first. Can they deliver on something from a technology standpoint to really kind of help cut across potential silos? What recommendation would you give for people who, are Workday customers who might be looking to unlock more strategic value from the overall platform, their overall investment in Workday solutions?
Yeah, I think the most important part is look at Workday as your source system for your people data. It's not a user experience system. That's really not what it's showing up to be in today's age. That doesn't mean that as they provide new value with the agentic experiences that we won't take a look to see is that a better experience than maybe what ServiceNow could provide or a different experience. Yes, we'll still do the comparison at that point and focus in on where the best user experience will be. But where I'm really looking at Workday today is where does Workday allow for the source of your people data and the context in which it matters? So if you think about a workforce planning, if you have adaptive planning, it's pulling together financial data and your HR data in a way that allows you to make decisions in what if scenarios. Why would I build a separate AI agent to do all of that? Why not use our source systems to do the core and allow that context to come to life? And then the AI experience is really the day-to-day conversational relationship that bleeds and reaches into those source systems. So that's how we're looking at it. Workday first with the data and the context in order to take the actions and processes that are necessary. The AI experiences as the front door relationship to take the heavy lift of thought and need off of someone's plate. If you ever try to open a rec, right, in Workday, it asks a lot of questions if you're not an HR partner as to a people leader that you have no idea. Like location, there's 452 Chicago locations. Which one do I want? I don't know. I just want Chicago. Like what's the answer? You don't want to have to think about that. So the AI experience should be giving, like removing all of that noise, but the actual Workday functionality behind it is executing the activities that are necessary and providing the context connections that are needed to be successful.
Yeah. So from your perspective, it really leverage the full value that Workday brings as this kind of like system of record,
Yep.
great at the people transactions piece of it, but then layer on top of that the things that you need to really kind of get, both user experience or employee experience, right? As well as really kind of cutting across or providing those things that might be gaps in just kind of the general process. Is that
Right.
fair?
I mean, if we think about a landscape in the time and attendance, right now I have over 40 time and attendance providers within our organization. I don't want to manage, babysit, maintain, deal with 40 vendors in the same space. So where does Workday shine from a time and attendance experience? How do we move those in so we can reduce the size of that landscape into a strategic product? And then from there, where does AI connect the dots to make sure that we're getting experience that the various team members within the organization need? So there's things like that. It may not be a one size fits all. It may go from 40 to 10. Great. That's still a much better landscape and management and cost effective approach than what we're doing today. So it's really thinking about how do we consolidate into these strategic tools and in the places that it makes more sense. And then where we need to offset. And same with Extend, by the way. We do have Workday Extend. We're learning that right now. We're seeing the good, the bad, the ugly of Workday Extend. It certainly can, if you're 85 to 90% of the way there with Workday, Extend is a great tool to put you over the edge, to make it work for the way you need to pull some work off of your people, where people decisions aren't necessary. So you leverage those tools within Workday for sure. But then there's still that bigger layer to say, okay, where do we want people to actually spend their energy long
Yeah.
term?
Yeah. I'll loop back on the extend piece because we'll do a quick little demo here at the end
Mhm.
about just some ways that we've leveraged that and we see other
Yeah.
people leveraging that. But hey, we are a, coaching and personal development company, so I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask the question. When you think about how you're helping managers or team leaders, coach, be more effective at, coaching, being a kind of a coach leader. And specifically just in kind of their like day-to-day interactions. What any suggestions, thoughts about how that might play a role in really kind of cutting across some of the siloed kind of data process, et cetera? Any insight there that we can add?
Yeah, we haven't solved it. I'll give you that. So, Darren, so your product in the direction that you're trying to go is certainly interesting and one that I think a lot of people should be curious about. But what we see is that our learning experiences are in one platform. We use Cornerstone today instead of Workday because we're a validated environment that requires certain activities. What we're starting to see, although Workday, well, Workday doesn't really have coaching anything in it. Not to anything to be excited about anyway.
Yeah.
But when we look at groups like Cornerstone, they do have a lot of coaching tools. But again, to that point of it's a little bit siloed into the learning space. So what we're starting to do is we're taking some swings in the AI space, right, to build agents that can kind of pull together specific use cases today. So for example, if we have our rotational leadership courses, right? We have different groups that are on rotation and very specific coaching designs that we want to provide to them as a follow up to keep following them on their journey. We're using AI to do those types of activities that are not in Cornerstone or in Workday, but it's leveraging the data from those two experiences plus our rotational tool that helps to make sure we know where people are, who are they reporting to, what's their assignment that they're focused on, to make sure that coaching activity is still tailored to the work that they're doing. So we're moving in that direction and we're experimenting with it. There's a couple of others when we think about like leadership, those big leadership courses that we have. Again, the follow up that follows about 6 months post. those courses. You invest a lot of money in your top leaders and these high potential classes. How do we follow up on that in a way? So we're starting to build some agents that do that, and it's very specific within the the framework in which allows that coaching to work for that purpose. Um, but we haven't really solved the full coaching as a whole environment. But we're working towards it. And we're certainly looking at the various products on the market to say who's leading these spaces, who's connecting the dots, what value and what business problems are we really trying to solve for that would help design and help us decide what tools are right for us long term. I think right now we're in the experimental space to see
Yeah.
what AI can do so we can learn ourselves to know what kind of questions we want to ask.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Well, at this point, we'll pause on the questions. I'm gonna invite Lane Allison in, who's our senior product manager. And I think, some of the things that you hit on in terms of like Workday kind of being this like a really great system of record, right? It's kind of the core foundational element for your HR architecture. But then really, how can tools like Extend, which is native, and allows any organization kind of build their own custom solutions. And then I think the thing that Workday launched towards the end of last year is the built on Workday Marketplace, which allows software companies like us to build and make available and accessible the things that kind of can sit on top of the Workday environment to really kind of look across those different silos. And so we thought we'd bring Lane on to really kind of share maybe a couple of really great examples of how, we're doing that through the Built on Workday marketplace, but really just as kind of a way to inspire people, whether they're using ours, which we hope they will, but whether they're using ours or, trying to create some of their own custom solutions, like these are some of the things that are possible with Workday as kind of that core platform technology.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Lane. I am really excited to show you guys some cool stuff today. Some of what I'm going to show you is live and then kind of a beta testing mode. I'm going to give y'all access to it. If you have Cloverleaf accounts, you'll be able to play around. Um, some of which is in development and launching near the end of this week. And we are still looking for early adopters and beta testers to give us a lot of feedback. And some of which is a little bit further out, but same thing. We're looking for customers who are eager to test out some agentic AI solutions and help direct sort of the direction of our product roadmap around these solutions. So, to start, I do want to show a new solution that is kind of the brain behind a lot of what I'm going to show you. Well, Cloverleaf, as Darren has mentioned, is an automated coaching platform that's driven by assessments like Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, DISC. We deliver coaching to people about themselves and their teammates. And we have a lot of really great tooling on our website. But something we have heard over and over again is, hey, there's so much here at Cloverleaf. It seems all really great, but I don't know where to start. And so at the end of July, we're going to be launching a new homepage experience that is our answer to that question. It's very simple. It's a single search bar. And the idea is we want our customers to be able to ask any question and get any like a question about themselves or their teammates or any interpersonal question and get great actionable coaching to help them solve whatever problem they're currently facing. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, me and my boss and a couple of my team members went to DevCon, which is Workday's development conference in Las Vegas, and we competed in their hackathon. And so leading up to that, a reasonable question I might have asked is, how does the DevCon hackathon team operate under stress? And if I ask that question, it's going to figure out, okay, what do I mean when I'm talking about the DevCon hackathon team? I have a team on Cloverleaf for that. It's going to figure out, okay, what are the personality profiles of all of those team members? And what are some of the ways that each of those team members operate under stress? So as it's thinking, I want to talk about how one of our focuses is making it actionable as well. So we'll give you an insight, but we'll also give you recommendations and actions on how you can navigate that situation. And as is thinking, I'm also wondering, I have Alex on here. He is our lead engineer. I'm wondering if we're experiencing some outages because it's taking quite a while. And this is the problem with live demos for products that are in development. Um, Alex is in the chat. Something is broken. Okay, well then we'll skip this for now. But I will share this link and it will not be broken probably by the end of this hour, and then everyone will be able to play with it. So keep that in the back of your mind. Something that Rosalind said that I really resonate with is how can we make our AI solutions more proactive? So what you just saw there, if it had worked, would have been a reactive solution. Oh, I'm someone, I have a problem, I want to get some coaching. I'm going to go retrieve that. The problem with that is, and I've heard this many, many times, is people have way too much on their plates. There's so much cognitive load for all of the different tools that they're using. So what we want to be able to do is deliver proactive coaching to people where they are when it matters, to reduce that cognitive load and to deliver them value basically right when they need it. And so I apologize to anybody who's not a SpongeBob fan. This is a prototype of something that will be launching mostly on this Friday as an early version. And so if anyone on this call is interested in testing this out with their organization, please reach out to me and let me know. But this is what we want to be able to deliver when somebody has our built on Workday application and an HRIS integration set up with Workday. So this is the flow of a new manager on Cloverleaf. It would take place entirely in Slack or MS Teams or the messaging application that they use. And we're going to start by saying something like, "Welcome to Cloverleaf, Mr. Krabs. We noticed one of your team members, Squidward, isn't on Cloverleaf. Would you like to invite them?" He can go ahead and invite Squidward. And then also, after Mr. Krabs has taken a few assessments, we're going to offer him the opportunity to turn his assessments into skills because we can do some skills inference based on what their personality profile might be. So this is just, this gets to that skills problem of one of the first steps to becoming a skills-based organization is just populating skills, getting that data completion or that data comprehensiveness. And so the idea here would be, oh yeah, I do believe that I have these three skills. We're just going to add them to the profile right from Slack. They don't have to go into Workday. They don't have to leave their flow of work at all. That goes ahead and happen. It lets them know these skills have been added to your Workday profile. After Squidward's taken a few insights, we want to deliver some like quick tips about how to manage Squidward. So that's what this is doing. It's saying, hey, Squidward completed 3 assessments. Here are 3 key things you need to know as Squidward's manager about how to manage Squidward. And we will offer the opportunity for them to go deeper, of course. But again, coming back to this idea of we want to be proactive and we want to deliver this solution to people right where they are. And this is really the knowledge that Squidward was on the team, but not on Cloverleaf yet, is driven by an HRIS integration. The ability to port skills back into Workday is driven by a built-on Workday application, which it's worth noting is developed through the Extend technology, but customers do not need to have an Extend SKU in order to download or install a built-on Workday application from the marketplace. Okay, so we're going to continue. This is another sort of HRIS driven alert where we see a reporting team change and a transfer. Plankton is transferring from another department, changing roles from a manager to individual contributor. Here are some tips on how you can help them sort of navigate that change. And then something that I'm personally the most excited about and what we're actively pushing on the hardest right now is getting live a Peakon engagement. I noticed earlier on the call there is someone who does utilize Peakon, and so I would love to have a conversation about how you're utilizing Peakon, how you're putting that data into action. The idea here is that let's say team engagement dips on your team. We can say, hey, you've got a team engagement dip. It's driven primarily by a drop in belief and conviction of the product. And Peakon like does an amazing job of telling you how team engagement is going, and they can even offer you suggestions at the team level of like, here are some things you might want to consider in this instance. But what they cannot do because of a fundamental principle of anonymity is help you coach to the individual. So if you're a manager, you're like, well, what might be driving a loss and conviction product for Lane could be very different for any other member of my team. And that's where Cloverleaf can step in. We won't violate anonymity, but we can say, hey, based on what we know about each of your team members' personality style, these might be the top drivers for that happening. So SpongeBob has a drive for innovation and needs to feel like the product is always advancing. Squidward has a need for structure and consistency and may get, frustrated if there's not good quality assurance and so forth. And so we can help coach to, hey, these are the things that might be going on, which can help be conversation starters for that manager in each of their reports. We'll also make recommendations about things you can do. And then I do want to show one other demo, and I'm going to try to do it live, but you saw what happened when you did it the first time. So patience and patience and grace, which is this collect feedback piece. So something else that I heard Rosalind say, I've heard this a million times, is that there are a lot of challenges with 360 feedback. One of the challenges is that oftentimes you don't get high quality feedback. Another challenge is people find it like laborious, it's dreaded, it takes a long time. And another huge challenge when we talked to there was a study that we did in partnership with Scott Dust around why people don't give feedback. We talked to over 2,000 people, and the number one hurdle that people cited was um, I am afraid of hurting their feelings. And so Cloverleaf has this really interesting, unique opportunity to take some of that like interpersonal guesswork out by leveraging personality data to help you craft feedback that's likely to land well with the recipient based on their personality style. So let me share a different screen. I realize I'm going a million miles a minute, but I wanted to get through it all before time was up. All right, let's go to my Slack. Let's go to Cloverleaf, Manager Copilot. This is probably not what we'll call it ultimately. This is just what we developed during the hackathon. So a little bit earlier, I received that team engagement alert in Slack, and it told me, hey, team engagement is down. This is the notification that my boss, Alex, would have gotten, just but for the sake of demo, we put it in my Slack. And then I got a notification that said, hey, Alex wants feedback from you. So we are exploring, or what I shouldn't even say we're exploring. We are working on launching a conversational AI feedback experience where you can talk with a Cloverleaf agent about the feedback that's being requested, and it will probe you with questions until it has enough information to really create high quality feedback. So what we're looking for when I say high quality right now, but this can be changed, is we're looking for something that is specific and we're looking for something that is solution oriented. And oh, I'm realizing I'm not showing my full screen. I'm sorry. You're not seeing what I'm seeing. Let's share the full desktop. There we go. Let's get this. Can you all see the thread? Yes. Okay, great. The reason I say this can change in terms of what we're looking for is because we know and understand that every company is invested in different like feedback models. For example, radical candor or star feedback. And we want to be able to layer in that sort of like company cultural context into, say, our feedback process. Or Rosalind, you mentioned that you invest a lot of money in leadership courses, like it could be SL2, for example. And we want to make sure that we layer in that cultural model into the coaching that we're delivering to managers. So we're referencing the principles that they're learning a lot about. But having said that, I will show you just sort of how this functionality works. My boss is on the call just in case anything goes wrong, but also I'm going to make fun of him a little bit. So know that that's okay. So it's asking me, hey, Lane, Alex wants to know what kind of support or acknowledgement helps you stay motivated or engaged at work. I'm going to go ahead and use voice technology to say, I really appreciate when my contributions are noticed and recognized. For example, at the DevCon hackathon, I made this beautiful multi-agentic diagram that was sort of the backbone of this whole feedback flow. And Alex didn't even really say thank you. He was so distracted by the work that he was doing, and I felt so unappreciated. And it's going to populate there. I'm going to hit send. And if it has enough information, it's going to summarize that for me and put it in a format where I can say, yes, I want to send this to Alex. Or if it doesn't have enough information, it's going to ask me a probing question. So it says, that's a great start. It needs more information. Thanks for sharing a specific example from the DevCon hackathon and describing how a lack of recognition impacted your motivation. To make your feedback even more actionable for Alex, could you share what kind of acknowledgement would have made a difference in that moment? So I'll say, um, yes, if Alex could have just said, hey, thanks for doing this. This is really great. Or I appreciate your contributions as a product manager. That would have gone a long way and made me feel a lot better about my contributions to the team. And I'll hit send. Hopefully that's enough information. Sometimes it has a really high bar and then it asks for even more information. But the whole point of this is to make a process that is normally like quite laborious and like you're doing a lot of wordsmithing and crafting really light. And the voice piece is really important as well, just being able to almost make it feel more conversational. So it did have enough information. It has now used my phrasing, my natural language, and structured this feedback into a form that is most likely to be well received by Alex based on his personality, and I can go ahead and hit send. One other thing to note about the solution is the way that the Copilot is speaking to me is leveraging my personality style as well, like my communication style. For example, my communication style is very enthusiastic, it's very fun. And so when it talks to me, it's very enthusiastic and very light and optimistic. When it's talking to my boss, Alex, it's a bit more direct and to the point. And so really we're trying to layer in personality intelligence in all of the like interactions that our AI might have with an end user. So one thing to note that I don't have to show, But what I would like to just sort of put in your minds, because we are working on developing, is when when Alex has received feedback from all of his team members, say, it will then consolidate that feedback, send it back to Alex, highlight some trends and maybe some team conversation starters. Also, um, we're really excited about the possibility for skill inference based on feedback. So if you do a round of 360s and you've gotten feedback from five people and three different people said, hey, you're a SQL wizard, that is amazing data and validation that we should probably add SQL to this person's worker profile. And so we want to leverage that sort of feedback data to help populate skills in a really validated way, because as Rosalind mentioned, validation is like a whole can of worms. That just starts to scratch the surface at solving that problem, but it's a good step in the right direction. And also just an investment that we're making in leveraging all of the insights and information that we're capturing and porting it back into Workday as a system of record to sort of reduce that like data silo problem. So
So
um, yeah,
yeah, awesome, Lane. Let me just summarize, because like some people could look at this and be like, "Hey, you're a software company. Of course, you can make this stuff work." But Rosalind, you mentioned, Extend. It sounds like kind of the early stages of playing around with Extend, identifying like, hey, how easy is it to build using Extend, etc. Your perspective on, and it doesn't have to just be Extend in the Workday environment, but like, I think with AI, with some of the tools that are out there, how easy do you think it is to accelerate kind of your ability to work across silos, whether it's using a built-on Workday app like ours on the marketplace or leveraging Extend or some other third-party tool? What are you seeing organizationally in terms of increasing capacity for that sort of thing?
I think we're still in our own way. I will just say that right now. So where we can I think that the biggest challenge that we're running into is that we're trying to figure out the use cases that have the most meaning. That's going to drive the business outcomes at the greatest level. And our business partners and ourselves don't think that way. People think in their silos. They think about solving personal productivity challenges. So I do think having tools like this that are already built that can sort of break that down to drive experiences, remove fear, start to help people think differently, really do help to accelerate our experiences and our thought process. But right now, what I'm finding is even in the extend world, it's very much a let's replace maybe a homegrown product with something that really Workday should be able to do, but they just don't for our business. So how do we do that? And same with some of the other AI tools. We're really struggling as a company to. I wouldn't say struggling. I mean, new. Maybe the word's new to trying to think bigger than the silo in which you're comfortable with and the problems that that are related to your silo versus, hey, we've got a bigger opportunity. So tools like this can help us accelerate that quite a bit.
Yeah, no, great point. And I do think, I think right now what we're seeing is the technology is getting way out in front of, I think, our kind of own imagination and capacity to really drive that. And I'm excited about watching people and organizations really kind of catch up to that over the next months and in years. Some quick wrap up. One, thank you so much, Rosalind, for your time and your insight today. It's been extremely helpful. And I just want to offer a reminder, and also, Lane, thank you so much for working through that, even though there was a bump in the live demo, which always happens. It's like I feel like trying to share audio or run a Zoom call oftentimes makes me feel like a neophyte. But we will be sending out the link to the recording, so keep an eye on your inbox. We'd love to continue the conversation, so definitely feel free to reach out, connect with us on LinkedIn, any of us, and I know Rosalind is a great networker as well, and happy to also connect on LinkedIn or otherwise. You can also feel free to cloverleaf.me is our website. You can reach us through there as well. And then we're all very active as well on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out to us directly. And just want to say thanks again for being here. We do look forward to seeing you at a future Cloverleaf webinar. And hope you have a great rest of your day.